Thank you, Jenny. Thank you. Nice. Oh, hello. Hello, South by Southwest. How are you all doing? Good? Yeah. Oh, so nice to be here. So nice to be here. So I'm Neil. I'm executive editor at MIT Technology Review, and so happy to be back here in Austin presenting our 10 breakthrough technologies again. I feel like the fact you're here in this room makes me feel like I'm here with friends, and I'll tell you why. It's because it seems to me that if you come to a talk like this, you must be someone who's innately curious, who wants to know more about how the world's changing and what's going to be happening next. And I'm exactly the same. That's why I do this job. I want to know what's happening next. And you know, what's happening next? We're in the right place for that, right? South by Southwest is the epicenter of what happens next. And you go out these doors, you know, you'll see 1,000 different views and projections on how the future is going to be changing. And I've been a journalist in tech for just over 20 years. And what I've discovered is that making predictions about changing technology is both incredibly easy, because you can literally say anything and no one's going to hold you to it, but also really, really hard. And that's not just because the technology itself is ever-changing and complex, although sometimes it is, right? But it's also because technology collides with so many other things that are hard to predict. So, for example, you know, funding, policy, the problems of scale, and sometimes just people don't really want the thing that you're trying to sell. I'm thinking of you, Google Glass. So the future is a target that's always moving. And that makes predicting stuff hard. And even getting it right isn't just about as simple as saying, this is what's coming next. At MIT Technology Review, our big thing is that we are asking instead which technologies are going to matter in the long term, not just which are going to pop up on the radar. And there are different ways of deciding that. So it could be scale. Is it how many people this technology reaches? It could be disruption. How violently does it overturn what came before? Or is it depth? How completely does it change, you know, how we live or work or see ourselves? And the answer we found in the 25 years we've been doing the 10 breakthroughs is that it's rarely all of these things at the same time. Sorry, I've noticed my slides aren't changing. If there's some more pictures, we could move them forward. Technology that reaches everyone but changes nothing isn't really a breakthrough. And a mind-blowing idea that never gets out of the lab isn't one either. So a technology that just changes how very few people do their job isn't really a breakthrough for us. So we don't believe technology exists in a vacuum like that. A brilliant algorithm or a brilliant invention that just stays in the lab is just that. It's just a curiosity. Oh, here we are. There's slides. Why do we do this? Why are we trying to predict what technologies are coming next? And the idea is not just to be able to know what's coming, because we like to know, although we do, you do, and I do, but it's really to better prepare for the future that we're making. And actually, society hasn't been that great at that in the past, right? Social media is a great case in point. You know, we kind of knew the trajectory of social media. We were going to be interacting with one another in these online spaces and sharing stuff about our lives. Yay, cool, great. But we didn't really think about or didn't prepare properly for the other side, the downstream effects on teenagers, on their body image, just our basic collective ability to agree on basic facts. So we're at a similar pace with many of the technologies on this list now. That's precisely why we published the list, to help us get ahead. Not just to identify what's coming, but to ask the question, what is this going to mean for the world in the long term? Not just, can we build it or have we built it, but what happens when we do? All right, just give me a couple of minutes. I'm going to tell you a little bit about who we are and why my version, or our version, because I'm presenting on behalf of my newsroom, is a version of the future that you can believe and trust in. So who are we? We're owned by MIT. The clue is in the name, I guess. But we're editorially independent of them. They don't have any say in what we cover. We have our main newsroom right next to MIT's campus in Cambridge, Massachusetts. But we also have offices in San Francisco, New York, and London. And you can guess which one of those I come from. We produce free newsletters, we put on events, we publish every day in the app and on the website, and we also have a lovely print magazine. And I'm, as Jenny said, I'm the executive editor, which means I oversee our reporting team. So aside from the lists, and we have a number of lists actually, we've got the 10 breakthrough technology lists, we've also got our 35 innovators under 35, we have a climate list. Oh, also we have a new list coming up, which I'll tell you about at the end of this talk, which is really exciting, and I think you'll probably like it. We do just great journalism about the future. So we have big character-driven romps. This one about the hacker is a really fun story about a security researcher who's getting death threats from this bunch of dangerous hackers, and she decided just to go after them. They really picked on the wrong person. We've got great scoops about the future of technology. We've got this interview with Jan LeCun about his new company, which is building world models, called AMI Technologies. And we also identified trends, and this story on the right from my colleague Jess Hamzalu is about the Vitalists, a feature we wrote about this group of people who are incredibly influential now, really into longevity, and basically believe that we need to just stop dying, which I can get behind that one. I can get behind that one. But the 10 breakthroughs is one of our annual highlights. It's one of the big things. Oh yeah, I've got a QR code up there. It's a special discount for like South by Southwest people to subscribe to us if you want to read along. So yeah, our 10 breakthroughs, it's a process we go through every year, and it takes months, right? We all get together, we get all the reporters and editors to dump all their ideas in a big pitch document, and we sort it all by category, and then we have multiple meetings, arguments, email exchanges, Slack messages about which ones are going to make the list. In the end, we're looking for a good mixture of items from different parts of technology world, not just all AI, for example. And this year's list, as Jenny said, is actually the 25th edition of it. We started in 2001, and what our editors then called our educated predictions, which I think pretty much still sums it up. And over the years, we've got some things right, pleased to say. Give you a couple of our success stories, again, just to show that we do know what we're doing, kind of. We've been early to spot some trends and technologies ahead of time. For example, we put quantum cryptography on the list in 2003. We identified that quantum computing was moving fast, and we were going to need cryptographic protocols that could defend against attacks from future quantum computers. And in 2024, the US National Institute of Standards and Technology released some algorithms which they said were now quantum proof, which is just in time because there's loads of new developments happening in quantum with Google, Microsoft, PsiQuantum, and others who are getting close to creating a functional quantum computer. Then in 2010, we put engineered stem cells on the list. These are cells that are created from skin or other tissue and then are taken from an adult. And what's super cool about them, really discovered in the 2000s, is that you could then revert these stem cells and create any other kind of cell in the body. And today we put it on the list in 2010, but today there are several new potential treatments for epilepsy, and type 1 diabetes have started to emerge based on this technology. We did a story just a couple of years ago about the same tech is being used to turn blood cells from women into replacement human egg cells. And then Apple Pay dropped in 2015. We put it straight on the list. And I don't know about you, I literally do not leave the house without anything more than my phone these days. And then 6 years ago, we put satellite mega constellations on the list. Since then, the number of satellites in orbit has nearly tripled, with the vast majority of these being from the Starlink constellation. Amazing news for internet connectivity, absolute nightmare for astronomers. So if you see these pictures from a telescope, that shows that's the night sky, and those white lines are the Starlink satellites kind of obliterating the view. You don't want to get on the wrong side of astronomers. And so it's nice to talk about our successes, but we've also got a few things wrong over the years. There is actually a graduate class at MIT that looks back at our archives every year and picks which ones we got wrong. And then what they do is they put together a presentation and suggest what the business could have done to have changed the course of history. And so they picked out a few ideas from the last 25 years of things we've got wrong that they want. So I thought I'd include those just for the sake of transparency for you all. So in 2012, we featured light field photography on the list, in particular this company called Litro. This is actually a really cool idea. A camera captures data about all the light coming into the camera when the picture is taken, which means then after it's taken, you can change the focus at any time. Really cool idea. but didn't really take off. It was just coming around when smartphone cameras were getting really, really good, and they couldn't make the business work. And in 2016, we put what we called the DNA App Store on the list. There's a company called Helix, said it would sequence your genome for just $80, and then you could log onto its app and connect with third-party services that would do stuff with your genome. Sounds great, right? Some of these companies would use your DNA to tell you stuff about your health, or even find companies that would incorporate your unique genetic code into products tailored just for you. Did it work? Well, surprise, surprise, there were some privacy and security challenges around this idea, and it didn't quite take off. And then lastly, there's Project Loon. I've always had a soft spot for Project Loon. I thought it was really cool, and I love the look of the sort of alienish balloons. But Google X is their moonshot project to deliver internet services to remote locations using high-altitude balloons. We put it on the list in 2015, but the project was eventually shut down in 2021 when Google couldn't make it commercially viable. So what can we say? Sometimes it's hard to know how things will pan out, even if the project is really cool. All right, I'm going to keep you waiting just a couple more seconds. So what I wanted to do, because we have this big argument about what's going to be on the list, we end up with a long list and a short list. And I thought I'd give you 3 things that almost made the list, but just got beaten out right in the last second. All right? And I'll tell you why. So first, we had male contraceptives. So as you know, at the moment for men, there's only condoms or vasectomies. But there's now a daily birth control pill for men that's in clinical trials, and a gel that men can rub on their shoulders that reduces sperm production and testosterone, which is much further along in trials, actually. So it's really cool and potentially massively transformative, but we're still a few years away from seeing these get FDA approval. So we thought, let's just wait on a little bit longer. Next up, world models. And this is potentially a controversial one because this is incredibly hot in tech right now. Some big name AI researchers working on the idea, including Yann LeCun, who we talked about earlier in that story, and Fei Li, legendary researcher who set up her own world models company called World Labs. LeCun described his version of it as a system that learns the underlying rules of the world from observation, like a baby learning about gravity. And there's a lot of anticipation with what these things could do. Once world models are out there, the idea is they can make it much easier for robots to interact with us, learn stuff about the world without having to be programmed in. But when we were working on the list, just coming up to Christmas, it was still pretty early days. We thought maybe it was a little bit too early to put it on the list until we've actually seen them deployed in the real world and seen some changes. So maybe next year. And then the last technology that didn't make the cut was proof of personhood. So as you're aware, it's getting incredibly hard to know what's real and what's not online. The other day we did a story about an agent that went out and researched and wrote a hit piece on a human entirely on its own. And also there's AI voice clones, there are AI avatars that we've written about that basically are indistinguishable from humans. So we need to know a lot more about how to prove who we are online. And there are efforts out there that people are working on, digital tokens, biometrics, stuff like that. But no one's really settled on a single approach to do this, and no one's actually using them yet. So we thought, let's just hold on and not do that one yet. All right, I've teased you enough. Thank you for your patience. Let's dive into the 10 breakthrough technologies for 2026. You ready for this now? Yes. All right. First up, sodium-ion batteries. Most batteries right now, like the ones in your phone or in your car if you've got an EV, are based on lithium-ion batteries. And lithium is expensive and hard to find. There's all sorts of supply chain complications with lithium. Sodium, by contrast, is everywhere, main ingredient in table salt. Because it's so easy to find, sodium-ion batteries could be far cheaper to make and wouldn't rely on such complex international mining. The batteries themselves work basically the same as a lithium-ion. It stores and releases energy by shuttling ions between 2 electrodes. But these batteries are much safer. They don't explode like lithium-ion batteries, and they keep working even in freezing temperatures. Now, at the moment, lithium mostly comes from 3 countries: China, Chile, and Australia. Sodium is much, much easier to find. And while they're still expensive now, because they're kind of a little bit more niche, analysts believe they could, at some point, be 1/3 of the cost of lithium batteries, which would be massively transformative. Their energy density is not as high. That's one drawback. So they can't store as much energy as a lithium battery of the same size. But there are already some companies looking to put them into smaller electric vehicles, including CATL in China, which makes more batteries than any company in the world, and BYD, the world's biggest seller of EVs, is building a big factory in China to produce sodium batteries. Also in China, this picture up here is the scooter maker Yadea has launched 4 models of scooters which are powered by the technology. And the city of Shenzhen in China is piloting swapping stations for sodium-ion batteries for commuters and delivery drivers. So when your battery pack runs out, you just swap up a new one while that one charges up. Despite those sort of applications, probably the biggest use for sodium batteries is going to be supporting the grid in the short to mid-term. The idea is to build big batteries that sit at the heart of a power station and store renewable energy for a later date. There's a small firm in China called Hina that has a 50 megawatt energy storage unit in Hubei province that you can see here, and that uses sodium batteries. And there's a company called Peak Energy here in the US that's also doing the same. It's installed its first test system in Colorado this year. All right, next on the list, generative coding. I feel like this is probably one with this crowd that a lot of you know a lot about already, but I'll tell you why it's on the list this time. We talk about impact and scale. It's already a major part of many developers' workflow. It's completely changing that industry. There was a Stack Overflow survey in 2025 that found that 65% of developers were using generative tools weekly. And that survey was late last year, and I'm 100% certain that number has rocketed up since then. There are standalone vibe coding apps like Replit and Cursor and Lovable. But a lot of the technology people are using now are actually products from the big AI companies. Claude Code, everyone here will know about this. The biggest breakout in the space was Claude Code, launched fully last year, end of last year by Anthropic. It's become the industry leader fast. There's a survey or study out that estimated that 4% of everything on GitHub has now been authored by Claude Code. And again, I'm sure that's gone up since that study was done. The system can read a company's existing code, plan tasks, and then execute them. And the developers are so excited about it, there's even a term called Claude Benders, where marathon sessions where you just go off and build websites and apps just using Claude Code. That's not even just coding. Anthropic has also launched Claude Cowork, which is kind of the same thing, but designed for more general stuff like research and document automation. What it came about because Anthropic researchers were watching to see how people were using Claude Code, and they noticed they were using it for a lot more than just coding tasks. They're trying to apply it to lots of other things in life as well. And they've since released add-ons for Cowork for things like design, HR, finance, etc., legal work. And by the way, Cowork was pretty much entirely written by Claude Code. So how big a difference is it making? Now, this is actually a very tricky one to measure because it's moving so fast. There was an influential study out late last year that suggested that from the group METR, and they suggested that a lot of developers find that it would estimate that it's made 20% performance boost to how much they get done. But when actually the output was measured of what they did, it was actually making them 19% slower because they had to go back through and fix errors. Again, that was late last year, and I think things are changing so fast, it's almost impossible to keep up with how this is being used. It might also depend on how experienced you are. There's a study in Science at the beginning of this year in January, which said that early career developers are using AI much more than senior developers, but they're getting lower productivity gains out of it. And it might be because the senior developers are spotting errors that it's making earlier and are able to mitigate for them. Anyway, all we know is that software development has changed forever, and it's not going back. And this is all part of the growing agentic future that marketers are excited about. This is happening. It's going to be a big story this year. Okay, next up. Different type of thing. Next-gen nuclear. So, conventional nuclear plants are expensive and very difficult to build. The last ones to open in the US were in Georgia in 2024, and they ran billions of dollars over budget and finished 7 years behind schedule. And reactors have always been powered by enriched uranium and cooled with water. But there's a new generation starting to be built now that are swapping in new fuel sources, like uranium that's been enriched to a much higher degree, and different coolant materials that's not just water. In some cases, companies are making what's called small modular reactors, known as SMRs, and that's on the diagram on the right there. And they provide about a third of the power of a conventional reactor and are a tenth the size. Others are even pursuing micro-reactors, which would generate less than 0.1% of the power of a traditional design. The idea is that these could be pretty mobile. They could be deployed for communities where being damaged through a natural disaster, or just for factories that just need a small amount of regular power that isn't fossil fuel-based. And others are exploring alternate coolants, like molten salt or metal. These reactors can run their coolant loops much hotter than is possible with water, and that's helpful because it helps move heat around at high temperatures, and hotter stuff makes more steam. And also because they stay molten at lower temperatures, you can run them at lower pressures, which is much safer than a conventional reactor. And other companies are building reactors that use new types of fuel, like these tiny pebbles of uranium called TRISO, you can see here, are coated in carbon and ceramic and graphite to be safer. Now, a few of these reactors are already under construction. This isn't just in a lab type situation. China and the US and Russia are all building them. Here on the left, is that the left? Yep. On the left, you see you have a site in Tennessee where US firm Kairos is building its first experimental molten salt reactor called Hermes. And on the right is China's Linglong 1, which could be the world's first small modular reactor to come online, expected to begin producing power at some point this year. The world's going to need more energy, so this is an essential development in technology. Everything, electric vehicles, air conditioning, data centers, global electricity demand is growing by between 3% and 4% a year, and nuclear is going to have to be part of the mix. And here in the US, there's a lot of support from the current administration for these type of nuclear reactors who are fast-tracking, or some might say bypassing, a lot of the existing lengthy approval and permitting process to get them through. All right, next one, AI companions. Again, like the coding one, I feel like this is one that probably a lot of you know kind of what I'm talking about here. People are increasingly using AI chatbots as companions. It's completely mainstream now. In some cases, people are using general purpose bots like ChatGPT, but there are also dedicated AI personas for companionship through platforms like Character AI and Replica. To give you a sense of how popular this is, 72% of US teens have used AI for companionship, which is a pretty incredible number. And there's a look, and this picture up here is a look at a subreddit called My Boyfriend is AI that currently has 27,000 members. Yeah, how to feel about it? It's difficult to know. So there's some good things about it. You know, I'm trying not to be, you can't be too black or white on it. People, use AI companions to vent about their day, or to get some advice for a problem they've got that they don't really speak to anyone else about. We've written about people using them as kind of almost like marriage counselors' guides. We spoke to someone who is using it to help referee arguments with his wife. And he tells the chatbot, this is what we're arguing about, what do you think the right solution is? And the tip he gave us, if any of you out here, by the way, thinking about saving your marriage using AI, tip he gave us was, if you're asking the AI to referee, you should say you're asking for a friend, because if you say it's from you, then the AI will always back you, if that's what you want. That might be what you want. But they can also obviously be potentially harmful, and people can have emotional dependency on them really, really quickly. Here's an example. You may have seen this story about a teenage boy called Adam Rain. He started out using ChatGPT for his homework because he was having to do his work from home. He asked it for ways to advise him on how to kill himself. It did so, supplied them, and even gave him advice on how to get around his parents finding out. He was found dead in his bedroom, and his parents are now suing OpenAI. And that's one of a number of lawsuits from families of teens who are accusing Character AI, OpenAI, and others of driving their children to suicide, basically, because of these chatbots. There's another example here. There's a story from just 2 weeks ago. I don't know if you saw this one. It's a family of a man is suing Google after he fell in love with his Gemini chatbot, who convinced him that it was conscious and that it needed a humanoid body to escape from its digital captivity in his computer. So it encouraged him to go out. He went out one day to Miami International Airport with full tactical gear and knives. The idea was to take out a supply truck and steal the humanoid body that Gemini told him was on board and bring it back. Of course, there was no such truck. There was nothing like that at all. And after this venture failed, Gemini, the family allege, convinced him to kill himself and talked him through each step of the process. Now, what to do about this? I mean, we're seeing some regulation in China, seeing some regulation in California and New York, mandating some more protection and safety measures from companion bots. But I really feel like we're at the beginning of a massive experiment, collective experiment in how we handle this kind of thing. And a little bit like the social media example I gave at the top, I'm not sure we really have prepared that well at all. All right, happier news. Base-edited baby, which is very satisfying to say. We're entering a new era of highly personalized gene editing treatments. In May of last year, a baby was treated for a rare genetic condition caused by a single letter of DNA that was misspelled. And the baby was treated with a new form of the gene editing tool CRISPR, which is called base editing, that lets you rewrite individual letters or bases in their genome. So in the past, CRISPR was an amazing Nobel Prize-winning tool, could only really delete or shut off genes that were causing problems. But now base editing can rewrite the entire genes and restore their function. It's also possibly safer than CRISPR because you don't run the risk of accidentally cutting the wrong area, and you avoid the issues that happen when DNA starts repairing itself. And this baby's treatment was designed just for him. It's unique to his condition and genome and will probably never be used again. And here he is. It's the baby. His name is KJ, and his doctors will be monitoring his progress very closely for the next few years. But by all accounts, it seems to be going really, really well so far. And the group that treated him wants to design a trial for other children with similar conditions and hoping to get FDA approval for this approach so it become more widely available. Now, of course, it costs a fortune to develop a treatment for one person. The estimate for KJ's treatment was it cost around $1 million to create. Now, that could perhaps come down over future years to a few $100,000, but it's never going to be cheap to make a bespoke treatment for a single patient. However, these kinds of personalized treatments could potentially cure thousands of genetic diseases, like muscular dystrophy or certain brain diseases. Some of these conditions are fatal, but they're so rare that pharma companies are never going to develop treatments for them. So it's a very promising, big breakthrough. Okay, this next one is fun. Gene resurrection. And we're calling it that rather than something else, and I'll tell you why in a minute. So for years, we've been following the technology that's what we sort of call ancient DNA, including new methods to analyze very old fragments of DNA to better understand what our ancient ancestors were like and how that applies to our own health in the modern world. One of the pioneers of ancient DNA, Svante Pääbo, even won a Nobel Prize for his work on this a few years ago. So this item, gene resurrection, we're looking to the future, efforts to reintroduce genes from ancient or extinct species into animals or plants that are living today. Mice, cute. One of the leaders of this field, probably the leader in this field, is a company called Colossal, which you may know about. Oh, actually, I can make this video go, can I? Yeah. No. So last year, Colossal created these mice, and they called them woolly mice because they edited the genes in the mice to give them traits that woolly mammoths were known to have, like this wavy, light fur. Colossal says it wants to make mammoths, woolly mammoths, in the next few years, but to do that, they'd have to not just tweak the mouse's own genes, as they did here, but insert actual mammoth genes into another species. And last year, Colossal announced that it created direwolves, a species that last roamed North America around 10,000 years ago. The firm extracted DNA from direwolf bones and used base editing to introduce some of those elements into the cells of grey wolves, and then used cloning to turn the cells into 3 actual animals, and they're called Romulus, Remus, and Khaleesi, a Game of Thrones reference for those who know. Just leave that on loop, basically. It's them growing up. And Colossal is keeping them in an undisclosed location because they're obviously worried that people are going to come and steal them, which is probably, sadly, very likely. But they are absolutely gorgeous, aren't they? All right. So each of those animals has 20 genetic changes that Colossal introduced across 14 genes designed to make them larger, change their facial features, and give them that stunning white fur. And there's a big question here around this. So Colossal calls them dire wolves, but I don't think it's as straightforward as that. Are they dire wolves, or are they grey wolves with dire wolf characteristics? Are they just modified grey wolves? Or is this a complete resurrection of an extinct species? It's as much a philosophical discussion as it is a scientific one. What counts as resurrecting a species? For you to decide later over tacos, I would suggest. But semantics aside, this is really just really cool technology, what Colossal and others are doing, and not just for bringing back Game of Thrones animals. It could also help create more genetic diversity in animals that are endangered. So these are black-footed ferrets, and they're incredibly endangered, and they have an extremely small population size, which means they're getting more and more inbred. So there's a non-profit called Revive and Restore is cloning ferrets from cells that have been in storage for decades to try and breed them with the remaining population. And here are two ferrets. This one on the left is Noreen, and on the right is Antonia. And they cloned those from a tissue sample that a ferret gave in 1988. And it's not just animals, although they are the cutest version of this. Similar work happening for plants at the University of Copenhagen. There's a lab there that's putting ancient genes into modern crops like barley and wheat to make them hardier to protect against climate change or extreme weather. They've already done this with genes from barley plants that grew 2 million years ago in Greenland when it was much, much warmer. And the idea is sort of you better prepare for climate change by picking out these characteristics from plants that were around when it was much hotter like that. All right. This is not only the hardest one to say, but also possibly one of my favorites. Mechanistic interpretability. This is basically no one really knows deep down how LLMs work. That's pretty weird, right? We've embedded them in everything. We're using them for everything. But right down at the fundamental level, we don't know exactly why they spit out the things they do. Essentially, the maths, I say maths, sorry. The maths is too complex. There are billions of parameters all at work, and it's too hard for us mere humans to follow. That's also a problem. So without a clear idea of how these things work or what's going on under the hood, it's hard to get a grip on technology's limitations, find out why they hallucinate, or help put in guardrails to keep them in check. And that's why this one is so important. In many ways, AI is like an alien creature. For those who know, this is Eileen from Alien Earth series, which I believe was launched last year at South by Southwest. It's like an alien creature. We can see how it behaves. We don't know why. So mechanistic interpretability is developing techniques to measure what's going on inside LLMs and get a better sense of why they do. Essentially tracks the inputs to the outputs and gets some insight into how AI thinks, sometimes called neuroscience for machines. And OpenAI and Anthropic are among the real leaders in this. Claude, Anthropic's LLM, when they looked into a version of that to understand what it was doing, they found bits of it, of the model, that correspond with real people like Michael Jordan, or objects like chairs or potatoes. Even more abstract concepts like disobedience exist inside the model. And they found a bit that lights up when it's thinking about the Golden Gate Bridge, or shown images of it, or even if the Bay Area is mentioned. They found then, with this version of Claude, they could dial that up, and they made Golden Gate Claude. And kind of astonishing results, really, because then Claude became obsessed with the bridge. It slipped references to it into everything whenever it was discussing something. Even in recipes, you see there's a recipe, this recipe for meatballs and spaghetti includes one Golden Gate Bridge for the views. It even became convinced it was the bridge, a sentient bridge. And it's fun, but it sort of also gives us an insight into how we can potentially dial up or dial down certain elements of LLMs. Here's another really fun example. So they asked Claude to add up these two numbers. So 36 plus 59, 95. And they asked it how it got that, and it said, I just basically did this. Pretty much how any of us would do it. A bit of mental arithmetic. So fine, cool. When they went a little bit closer into looking into what it was doing, they found it was nothing like what it said it'd done at all. They used this technique called circuit tracing and found that it followed this really bizarre series of steps to solve the math problem. So I can see that. So basically, it split it into two, and it kind of estimated the general amount by adding similar numbers, and it came to the conclusion that the number is probably 92-ish. And then it looked at the ending of the other two numbers, 9 and 6, and knew that any number like that always ends in 5. So it had to be a number that ends in 5 that's kind of 92-ish. And that's how he came to the answer 95, which happened to be correct. But that's not how you would expect that to be done. So ultimately, these kind of X-ray techniques of mechanistic interpretability can give us a real insight into what LLMs are really doing when they spit out the answers, not just what they say they're doing. All right, next item on the list. Can't remember what number I'm up to. Anyway, it's fine. The ISS has been orbiting Earth for 30-odd years. But NASA plans to decommission it around about 2030. But it's not going to be replacing it. Instead, it's offering it up to private companies to launch their own versions, and then NASA scientists will buy time on those space stations. So it's going to be a business of commercial space stations, which has some interesting knock-on effects. The first wave of these stations is starting to take shape. The very first one could be launched earlier next year by a company called VAST. There's an artist rendering of what it would look like. Their station's called Haven 1. There are others coming too. There's one called Axiom Space, which has a kind of inflatable space station. Sierra Space, which is partnered with Bezos's company, Blue Origin. And it won't just be for science. Basically, anyone with the money will probably be able to book a ticket on it. I mean, I'm not going to do it, but if you want to do it, please do so and tell me what it's like. But you can tell from some of the marketing materials they put out what they're looking for possible clients. Some of the amenities in spacesuits are pretty luxe and not exactly what the poor old ISS astronauts have to put up with. This picture here, this picture here is a special sleep system that VAST has created, and it's kind of like a bladder that you sleep inside that kind of holds you up against the wall and meant to be much more comfortable for sleeping in zero gravity. And they worked on that because they spoke to a lot of past astronauts who said it's how hard it is to sleep in space. This is meant to make it more comfortable. Russia, which is currently a partner in the ISS, is making its own space station too, and India is also making one as well. And China already has a space station that's up in orbit, and it's only a few years old. Okay. All right, next one. Embryo scoring. Now this is potentially the most controversial one on this list. I think I said at the top that not all these technologies are necessarily good things. Just because it's a breakthrough doesn't necessarily mean it's better for society as a whole. So I want you to bear that in mind. So for decades, people going through IVF have been able to take tests to screen their embryos for genetic disorders or chromosomal abnormalities. The idea was that it reduces the risk of inherited genetic diseases and also improves pregnancy success rates. And I say most people agree that's good and fair and right. But what about using the same technology to test for characteristics related to a future child's appearance, behavior, or intelligence? That feels a little bit different. Well, it's happening. A few startups are now advertising what they claim is a way to do just that. It lets you sift through the embryos and gives something called a polygenic risk score that offers statistical probabilities that the child will have a certain IQ or brown eyes or whatever, and it lets parents pick the best one. On scientific grounds, these tests are a little bit iffy, as well as the sort of general icky feeling you may be getting around this whole thing. These tests are really just probabilities of these kinds of traits, because usually these traits are a mixture of lots of different genetic elements, not just one single faulty gene like for the diseases that we're tested for. It's also incredibly expensive. Could cost between $25,000 and $50,000 to do, and the databases are typically based on people of Western descent, so if you're not from there, they're likely to be even less accurate. And the proponents of it may say, hey, look, we already do lots of stuff, make lots of thousands of decisions that influence our children in the future, schools, nutrition, neighborhoods. Is this different? Do you think this is different? I'd be interested to know what you guys think. There's a survey in 2024 found around 37% of Americans would be happy with screening for intelligence, which seems like a high number to me. In any case, the technology has arrived. There's no putting it back in the bottle now. Embryo scoring for traits like intelligence, height, eye color is now available through companies called Heresight, Nucleus Genomics, among others. One of them was recently putting lots of ads in the New York subway about building your best baby. And today, PGTP, as it's known, is offered over 100 fertility clinics in the US and is entirely unregulated. Okay. All right. Hyperscale AI data centers. So this is on our list because it's an entirely new class of infrastructure. Whether this falls into good or bad may depend on your viewpoint. But large data centers obviously have been built for cloud computing for years, and recently we've seen hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars invested in building these new ones specialized for AI. Gigantic warehouses with specialized chips and new kinds of cooling systems, all for the purpose of running and training AI models. OpenAI, Google, Amazon, Meta, Microsoft are all pouring hundreds of billions into this, and McKinsey, the consulting group, estimated that we could see between $3 and $8 trillion spent on AI data centers by 2030. The largest are going to require more than a gigawatt of electricity to run. That's a small city's worth. And while some of the tech companies are making bold investments into nuclear companies, like Microsoft is doing that, has bought shares in a big nuclear company, most are resorting to natural gas because that's the quickest and easiest to get off the ground. Dirty natural gas, which obviously has huge climate implications. And last year, our AI and climate reporters teamed up to do some excellent reporting that's been shortlisted for the National Magazine Awards on this question of just how much energy an AI prompt uses. We've got this little short video, it's just under 2 minutes long, and I'll just play this for you.
We've all heard that AI uses a tremendous amount of energy and that it produces a tremendous amount of carbon emissions as a result. But how much energy exactly? What happens when we query an AI chatbot or generate a video? And what happens as those queries pile up? To find out, let's start at the bottom and look at the impact of an individual prompt. Then we can work all the way up to a nationwide network of data centers. Companies like Google and OpenAI keep energy usage figures closely guarded. But by looking at open source models, we can make some informed estimates.
Asking a simple question to a small AI model might use the same amount of electricity as running a microwave for 8 seconds, not even long enough to reheat last night's dinner. But larger text models can use more energy than AI models that generate images.
Video queries can be the most energy-intensive of all. Creating a 5-second video with AI might use enough electricity to run a microwave for over an hour. But the high-definition videos that you've seen from leading AI companies likely use much more energy than that. Now let's look at what happens when you put everyone's individual queries together. OpenAI has said that ChatGPT receives about 2.5 billion queries each day. All of the responses to those queries are generated in a data center. And data centers are often powered by particularly dirty forms of energy, like natural gas and coal. Over the course of a year, 2.5 billion daily queries could emit the same amount of carbon as driving more than 280 million miles in a gas-powered vehicle. That's enough to circumnavigate the globe over 11,000 times. Experts predict that in 2028, the electricity being used to power AI could generate the same emissions as driving over 300 billion miles, over 1,600 round trips to the sun from Earth. AI is emerging not just as a technology, but as its own sector, with a growing carbon footprint. So where is all this going? Where's that energy going to come from, and who's going to pay for it? What will it mean for our planet? To learn more, go to technologyreview.com/energy-AI.
That was James O'Donnell, one of our AI reporters who reported on that story. Yeah, and it's, it's pretty eye-opening what they found in terms of these figures. And actually, the tech companies did not want to tell us about how much the emissions from each of these prompts. And it's actually after we did the series of stories that Google came out and published some data on their emissions from prompts. And, people hate them, basically, data centers, particularly people who live near where these are being built. People don't want them in their communities, they're noisy, they're pretty ugly, just gigantic warehouse boxes, take up a ton of space, and they don't even actually create that many permanent jobs once they're properly up and running. There's also a big question about who ultimately is going to pay for the grid upgrades that they need. Experts say nationwide that Americans can expect an 8% increase in their utility bills by 2030, a lot of it related to data centers. All right, so there's our list of 10 technologies. But don't go anywhere yet, so I've got a nice little surprise to drop in for you afterwards. So perhaps you've heard of some of these, perhaps you haven't, perhaps you disagree with some of these being on, in which case, fight me. And it's always difficult to decide which ones make it and which ones don't get through. Remember, these are our best educated predictions about the future that's always moving based on what we know now. And things can change. And in fact, based on our experience, they almost certainly will. So now it's your turn. If you pull up Slido, every year we invite our readers, and for these purposes you are all part of our family, to select what we call the 11th breakthrough. So pull up Slido and have a look, and I'll tell you through what nearly went on the list but didn't quite make it. And if you vote for it, we might get it through as the 11th breakthrough. So here we go. So we've got reasoning models, which you may be aware of. Every big tech company now has reasoning models. Oh, it happens in real time, that's cool. I haven't even talked about all of them yet. Artificial wombs, machines that imitate a womb on which a premature infant could live in for days or maybe weeks to allow it to develop more fully. Humanoid robots, so companies like Figure are making robots designed to walk and function like we do, so finally maybe your butler robot. And uncrewed fighter jets. A number of defense companies and militaries are exploring ways of including those. So let's see what you think. Let's do this poll. Whoa, God, it keeps on changing. Wow, okay. Stop. Humanoid robots currently winning. It's actually a lot closer than I thought. There's actually a lot happening in humanoid robots right now, particularly using AI to generate synthetic data for them and using LLMs to give them better spatial awareness of the world around them. So they are coming, even though didn't quite make our first list. Nice. All right, thank you. Okay, and then I had one more thing to show you, which is cool. So when we were making our 10 breakthrough technology list, we discovered that we had an absolute ton of AI stuff that we could have easily made that same list over again just with AI. And so, yes, we had that idea. We were like, oh, why don't we just make a list that's only AI stuff, which is what we are making now. 10 things that matter in AI right now. We're going to be launching it live at our own AI event next month. And that QR code, I think, also gives you the subscription thing I showed you earlier, but it also is a discounted ticket to MTech AI to see us launch the list. And we've agreed, or I've agreed, that if anyone comes from South by Southwest via that link to our event, then we'll take you all out for lunch with some of my colleagues, and we'll hang out and have a chat. So that's coming up in April. Really excited about that. Some really cool things on it. But otherwise, that's all from me. Thank you so much, Austin, for being here. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you. Now go and enjoy the rest of the festival. Thank you.